Yeah, so thanks for the intro. Again, I'm Dwayne Desauliniers with the Associated Press. I work out of our New York office. I started as a journalist a long time ago. I'll just pull up my deck here. And really fell in love with technology in the mid-90s. So that was when the internet was happening. And it struck me that this is a cluster of technologies that is just going to have a real big impact on journalism, both news collection and news distribution. So I fell in love with that. I left active journalism. My last assignment was the war in Yugoslavia. And ever since then, it's just been a real passion and a lot of fun to work at this intersection of journalism, media, and technology. And it's really continuing. And I'm here to learn at this conference. I'm a content guy, a biz dev guy, not a technical person. But the last day and today, and certainly looking forward to tomorrow, has been really, really helpful in helping me understand where this is going, some of the issues that we've thought of, and certainly some issues that we've not thought of. In the work that we're doing when it comes to blockchain and in particular, using oracles to distribute news. So for all the speakers and the questions, I want to thank everybody for participating. Like I said, it's been really, really helpful. And I'm looking forward to talking at the end of this presentation about, more specifically, some of the challenges, some of the risks, some of the concerns, some of the problems when it comes to putting news on chain. I should mention, as I said, I'm not a reporter, so everyone can just take it easy. I come from the business side. I've never been to Berlin before. It's the first time here. There we go. So I was very intrigued coming over, sort of looking into the history of the city. Certainly a very old city. But I learned that in 1848, that's when really the modern Germany sort of came to be. And what's fascinating is it started with the French Revolution, and then that spread through Europe. And it struck me as sort of very similar to the Arab Spring that we saw in 2010 and 2011 and on. So it was a long time ago. Germany literally didn't exist. In 1848. It was a collection of 39 states. And this revolution, a couple of quotes just caught my eye when I was doing the research. This sort of summed up, I think, what those revolutions were all about. And then that quote brought to mind this quote. Because I think they're sort of saying the exact same thing. And that's causing this revolution with blockchain and decentralization. And it's remarkable, history repeating itself, with technology playing a leading role. So the Associated Press, we've been around for some time. I mentioned 1848 with the revolution in Germany. My company was formed 2 years before that. So a long way of saying we've been around for some time. AP was founded in 1846, so we're 176 years old this past May. And we operate a global news operation. We have staff around the world in about 280 bureaus in over 150 countries, and in some tough spots as well. It took us a while to get into North Korea, but we have a news bureau in North Korea, as an example of where our reporters and where our journalists are based. AP has always been, I'd say, as much of a tech company as a journalism company. We really had no choice. We would write our stories, and they had to be delivered really, really quickly. because if they didn't arrive quickly and on time, the value of that information, certainly went downhill, and pretty quickly as well. So over the years, AP's always had to manage and figure out distribution. There's no vendors really that could help us get our news from A to B, globally, especially. So that's sort of the technology side of the business. We've done a lot of invention at AP. We started with, believe it or not, the Pony Express. That was the first way that we delivered news in the 1840s. We could deliver it faster than the US Post Office. That's why we used horses to get news delivered through the Pony Express. And then as time went by, we adapted to all other newer technologies, again, because we had to. So the telegraph, of course. After we got tired of horses, we moved on to telegraph. And from there, we moved on to telephones and telephony and satellite. In the 80s, 70s, and 80s, AP was the biggest leaser of satellites in the world to get our news across the planet. And then satellites went away, and we switched to web delivery, APIs, and so on. So what really interests us is the blockchain. In the context of what's next? Is this a future delivery platform that we should be focused on? I'd say that we've been pretty early, but one thing I tell folks is, we're not a poster child for the technology. I don't even know if it's going to work. So far, it seems all right, but who knows? But what's important is, for us, and from our perspective, is does this technology help us get our facts and information around the world, quickly and accurately and without failure? So that's really our focus when it comes to the work we've done the last few years with regards to the blockchain. Is this the next generation of informing people with facts and the journalism that AP produces? So I want to talk about a use case principally today, and sort of focus on that a little bit, because it's something we've actually done. It's not something that's on the drawing board. It's something we did in 2020. Look to do it certainly again in later this year with the US elections, the midterm elections. But I want to focus on election data on chain this afternoon, and share with you some of the work we've done with that, and also listen to your questions, criticisms about that, thoughts and ideas about that. It's a very, very, very intriguing distribution platform, we think. So one of the jobs that AP does in the United States, and we've been doing this as well since 1848, the AP counts the votes in pretty much every US election, sort of from mayor on up to president. When you're watching American election results on TV, you may have seen a graphic that says, hey, AP has called the race for such and such a candidate. There's a lot of work that we put into generating that information, and certainly, of course, making sure that it's accurate. I'll describe that really quickly. So we employ an election team, and on election nights, we deploy a small army. Depending on how many elections are happening, anywhere from 2,000 to 5,000 people. We will send far, far, far upstream, right to where the votes are being counted, right to the precincts, the buildings, where volunteers are counting the votes. And that's where we get the data. We get it firsthand. We're not given the data by the government. We get it ourselves. And we do this because, one, we want to know the results, and we want to report them very, very quickly. And in the US anyway, governments don't certify the elections for weeks or even months after folks have voted. So, we think obviously that's a problem. People need to know who won. And then the other foundation of our work with elections, of course, is we want an independent count of the election. We don't want to take the government's word for it. We want an independent account, see it with our own eyes, report it with our own eyes, and that's a service that we provide. So the use case that we embarked on in 2020 was putting election race calls on chain. So an election race call, from AP's perspective, is when we declare the winner of an election. In 2020, we had 7,000 elections in the United States. And we counted all those votes. So it's a combination of humans and machine that cause our race calls to happen. It takes 3 editors and 2 mathematical models to all agree that candidate 2 cannot catch candidate number 1. And only when those conditions are met will we go ahead and issue a race call. So there's a lot of work that goes into that. It's not something that we obviously take lightly. And in 2020, our accuracy rate of calling elections was 4 nines, so 99.99. The races that we missed were races, one, that we actually did not call because they were too close, or where the government or the counters provided some erroneous information at the lower level elections that we had to clean up. So we decided that as a statement, as an exercise, that we wanted to put these race calls on chain. And I'm really glad we did that, because there's a lot of people in the United States that sort of want to erase the last election. We didn't know that then, but it really added to our use case, what we know now. A quick aside, we celebrated this milestone on the blockchain by minting our very first NFT as well. That's a map of the US election, the final results, as you can see, from outer space. So we had some fun with that as well. What we didn't put on chain was the actual data itself. We didn't put on the vote-by-vote counting. We didn't say through the evening, this candidate's got so many votes, this candidate has so many votes. That really made us nervous for some really important reasons. So we were very specific in our intention of just putting on the race calls, our declaration of who won. And again, that was the result of a human and machine decision-making process. But we were actually very surprised with the feedback that we got. We obviously did not have the technology in-house to orchestrate this. So we worked with a great technical partner called Everipedia. And like we said, it was surprisingly successful. We learned a lot, and we heard from a lot of people. The phone was ringing off the hook with people with questions, ideas, concerns. So we knew we hit something when we did this, and certainly worthy of ongoing research and piloting and experimentation. What we learned was that the consumer of this information was largely predictive markets back then. So that was all right. I can't lie. It's not necessarily the impact that we sort of wanted to have, helping to settle bets, but it was what it was. And the data was presented, and that's how it was consumed. And we considered that to be successful. Shortly after that, we went on to March Madness, and we published a little bit of sports data from the March Madness basketball tournament in the United States. Not as popular as the election data, but still showed us that there is demand. So the question we struggle with, and it came up earlier today during Brent's presentation, is why trust AP? What gives us the right to consider ourselves trusted? You know, we all know the disaster that would unfold if we made a mistake. So trust is sort of the core issue that we're all trying to figure out. And I started my presentation by taking you back to 1846, because we've been building our reputation for 176 years. And our reputation is everything. We've learned a lot during that time. We've built, a raft of standards over that time. That's sort of some of the groundwork we undertook in our thinking and our strategy about this particular project. AP is also a unique organization. This graph up here basically shows, the objectiveness or the biases of various news organizations. And there's been a number of surveys like this, and AP always ends up at the top and in the middle, which means we have very, very broad reach, and we play it right down the middle. We don't do any opinion journalism. We don't write opinions. We do very, very little analysis. Our focus is what happened, and to the best of our ability, why it happened. Every day I think it's about half the world's population comes in contact with a piece of AP journalism. So the breadth that we have and the role that we play in society is pretty fundamentally important for us. We obviously take that very, very seriously. So we have a lot more questions about this than answers. Errors terrify us. Doesn't matter if you're talking about the blockchain or anything. Errors terrify us. And that's why we have layers and layers of editorial standards that are applied for every single story, every single photograph, every single video that we report. News is also often a dilemma between speed and accuracy. At least it has been. So it's a little bit comforting now with this environment that we really just need to focus on accuracy. Speed's not an issue, at least not yet. So that gives us some comfort as well, that this is really a game of accuracy. Trust is not a new problem. I showed the slide earlier of the telegraph ticker. Why trust a telegraph ticker? DeFi in the 1900s was often based on a telegraph ticker. In this glass case, the ticker would come out, tell you what the price of stocks were. Why trust that? So it's not a new problem, but it's certainly the dominant problem. A lot of folks call it the Oracle problem. I actually think it's a God problem. Absolute truth, I think, is more of a God problem than a blockchain problem. This pilot went really well. And again, underpinning our thoughts here this is John Danishevsky. John's our standards editor. So John watches everything that we do at AP, everything we file, everything that goes out the door. And we have about a 27 or so page news standards guide. So 27 pages instructing our reporters how to report. So the report is fair and the report is accurate. Add that all up, and that's what gave us confidence that we should explore this. There's no perfect truth. You can't prove truth, just like you can't prove mathematics. But with 176 years of history, and with our standards in place, and with not having to worry about speed, only focused on accuracy, We thought this pilot was a good thing to undertake. And we're going to do more of that, we think, this year. So there's some midterm elections happening in the US this year, and our plan is to repeat what we did and put some of those race calls on chain. What else are we thinking about? Well, like I said, more election data. And then it's facts. This is not a medium where we will write stories. We'll write stories for websites and newspapers. But for this distribution platform, as long as we're working on it, it's a much more precise, deterministic, and finite type of data that we will publish. We're considering a responsive Oracle as well. We do a lot of fact-checking today. So whenever you see fact-checking done on Twitter, that's AP working in the background to make sure that, to help Twitter, make sure that only accurate material is being posted. So we're curious about applying that fact-checking methodology and business over to our Oracle and our node as well. So that's another piece that we're looking at. Historical facts, geopolitical news. Like I said, we published a little bit of sports data. So those are things that we're looking at. But what you won't see on the list is sort of real-time news reporting, because we're not ready for that. We're not ready for, because again, we're terrified of mistakes. And the immutability is something, obviously, that really, really concerns us and would be a big hit to the reputation. So we pick our data points. And that's sort of our strategy going into our ongoing work with regards to oracles in the blockchain. And also, one thing that we're considering right now is we've got a team, of course, in Ukraine. And besides reporting the news from the country, we're documenting what we believe to be war crimes. We're doing this in partnership with NPR and the news program called Frontline. So we've published all this online today. It's a collection of photographs, videos, and other facts that our team on the ground has gathered and documented. It's great that it's on the internet, but I think getting this evidence on chain is very important. I think it's a statement that we'd like to make, and part of the experimentation and the pilot work that we're doing when it comes to distributing news and information on chain. So, as Satoshi said last, there's work to be done, and we will continue our 176-year-old mission of informing the world with accurate facts and information. And what's driving us these days is just a belief that facts do belong on chain. And putting the right ones there is, again, something that we're continuing to work at. So that's a little bit about our case study with US elections and a little bit about AP as well. The history of the company, I think, is important to put in context why we think we can publish on chain. The length of time that we've been working, the standards that we have over all those decades, give us some confidence that this makes sense for us. So thanks, everybody. Looking forward to a discussion about this. Here's my contact info. Like I said, I'm here to learn. So I'd love to keep this conversation going after the conference is over. As I said, we're planning to publish more information, and it's all been based on discussions in the industry, conferences, learning, self-study. So I hope we can connect with each other and continue talking about this sort of data and information being published on chain.
Okay.
So thanks very much. I'd like to take any questions.